Slow claps. Slow claps all round. John Wick 4 caps off one of the greatest sagas in the whole of cinema. Like, is that even a debate at this point? In case you couldn't tell by that intro and by me clapping, I'm a pretty big fan of this franchise. So I was looking forward to this movie more than a lot of other movies that have come out so far this year. This was probably my most anticipated movie of the first sort of 3 or 4 months of the year until Evil Dead Rise comes out next month. That I'm slightly looking forward to more than this because I do love me some Evil Dead. But I was eagerly anticipating this, and then all the reviews came out calling it one of the greatest action movies ever, and it set my expectations up really, really high. So walking out of this movie, I can safely say it's another great John Wick movie, but I do have a couple of issues and a couple of thoughts. It's not even really a negative on the movie's part that I'm going to start with. It's not really the movie I was expecting, which is kind of weird to say because it's a John Wick movie, but I'm not going to be getting into too many spoilers here. There are going to be very light, mild spoilers. I'll be hinting at a couple of things, but I'm not going to explicitly give away the ending or anything like that. You know how John Wick 3 was basically, you had about 10 minutes in the middle there where it slowed down for a bit and the rest of the movie was like action for 2 hours, 2 hours 10 or whatever it was. This movie really spaces out the action scenes, and I was not expecting that from the reviews I saw, so it took a little bit of time for me to actually adjust to, because I was almost expecting it to build up these new characters a little bit, which it does spend a lot of the movie doing, and we'll get to those characters in a minute. And then you realise that like 40 minutes have gone by and you haven't, had an intense action scene, and it takes a little bit of getting adjusted to. With that being said though, the bits in between the action sequences are not boring at all. It's basically character building and world building. The characters that are introduced in this movie, Donnie Yen's character, Kane, is a standout. Definitely one of my favourite characters in this franchise. He contributes quite a lot of physicality to the action sequences in this movie. He was just a great fun, and I'm not familiar with the actor who played Mr. Nobody, but he was a good addition too. So basically all the characters added into this movie, I felt fit. I enjoyed watching them on screen and what they added to the action sequences. I guess my main negative, is because I love 3 so much that I kind of wish the action, there was a little bit more of it, which is going to get me some hate, because without spoiling too much, you go a little while in the middle where there's not a whole bunch of action going on, that's more world building and there's a quest going on. And then towards the end, you kind of get everything you came to the movie for, where there is a sequence. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything about what happens in this sequence, but I'm pretty sure, keep in mind I wasn't timing it, that the action literally does not stop for about 25 minutes. So it kind of makes up for the fact that you haven't had an action scene in a good little while with that, where it's like a couple of different set pieces built into one. There's one scene in particular that, actually, I'm going to steal this quote from Jeremy Johnson's review, but there's no other way for me to describe it. It reminded me of Hotline Miami, which if you haven't played that game, you should. It's an amazing game. But the way that that scene is filmed and how everything sort of escalates in that scene was absolutely perfect. That might even be my favourite action sequence of the entire franchise, to be perfectly honest with you. Just the way it was filmed and the way it was handled and the weapons used in it were absolutely fantastic. And I can't believe in that last section I just filmed that I forgot to mention Bill Skarsgård. How the fuck did I forget Bill Skarsgård? Pennywise the clown himself. I don't know why I said it weirdly. Pennywise the clown, Bill Skarsgård, is a great villain in this movie. He's intimidating, but he's not really a physical presence, if that makes sense. He's not getting into fist fights or anything like that, which I don't think is a spoiler. He is much more of a mastermind, orchestrator kind of villain. A lot stronger than the villain, I can't even remember her name, like the Judicator from John Wick 3. That was like my one negative of that movie. She was not a good villain really in my eyes, but this movie has probably the best villain of the franchise in Bill Skarsgård, and the character dynamics between what he's trying to achieve and the people he tries to get to do things for him and how that all culminates at the end is very interesting too. Also, The way this movie is shot is easily the best looking of the franchise as well. The cinematography and the lighting in certain scenes, it's some of the best shots you are going to see in an action movie, like, ever. The way it's filmed, the way it's lit, the way that the camera follows the characters around when these action scenes are happening, which you've come to expect from John Wick. You know that the action scenes are going to be filmed in a very, very particular and stylistic way that works. You can tell everything that happens. You don't have really any shaky cam where you don't know who's killing who or who's getting shot or whatever. It's just honestly probably the best shot movie of the franchise too, which from a more cinephile perspective, if you care about that kind of stuff like I do, I know I don't always mention it when I talk about movies, but it's an important aspect of a movie, whether you agree or not. That is a fact. This is a beautifully shot movie. It really is. It's also great to see as well that even though I didn't really expect the movie to go the way that it did, like I mentioned before, I expected it almost to be action all the way through like John Wick 3 was, that you really don't feel the runtime at all. All the world building that they do in this movie and character moments they throw in there are necessary. I don't really think you could cut a lot from this movie, to be perfectly honest. I just burped. I'm not going to cut that. See, this movie's just so enjoyable that it can make me burp randomly. Just, I'm drinking water. Water doesn't typically make you burp. John Wick, thinking about the action scenes and the necessary character moments of this movie, made me burp. That is the power of John Wick. That is the power of cinema, ladies and gentlemen. So, John Wick Chapter 4, I might go more in depth and do a spoiler review later down the line if people want that. But these are my general thoughts. This is about as in depth as I can go without giving major plot points away or going in depth with certain kills and parts of the action sequences I liked. But great new characters, great world building, beautifully shot. Everything you want from a John Wick movie is in this movie. In spades. Just don't go in expecting a full-on bloodbath for 3 hours, because you are not going to get that. That's my fault. Me going in expecting that almost made me at a couple of moments go, this isn't as great as everyone was saying it was. But on reflection and after the movie finished, I was immensely satisfied. So easily 8 out of 10. Wrong side. 8 out of 10. This side, right here. Yeah, that's where I put my ratings. 8 out of 10. Pretty much the same as I'd rate 1 and 3. I think 2 is definitely the weakest of the 4. But even that movie is still really good. It's just my least favourite of the 4. So we've got a solid 4-movie saga. It wraps up the John Wick story very well. And I am looking forward to a couple of other movies coming out. Evil Dead's coming out soon. Infinity Pool apparently comes out tomorrow here. But the cinema I go to has posters for it. And there's no screenings. Also, we just got Pearl over here, which is baffling too, because that came out like last September everywhere else, and I have already seen it, but I could talk about that too because it just came out over here. But yeah, there are some other movies I'm looking forward to talking to. But what did you think about John Wick 4? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in a future video very soon. Goodbye.